Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, happy Tuesday, happy Wednesday, wherever you might be, whenever you're watching this presentation, welcome. My name is Jeramy Fishel. I'm the co-founder of Instinctive Insights. We'll talk a little bit more about my elevator speech towards the end of the deck, which I hope you'll be gracious enough to stick around for. But let's dive into the top 5 trends in adaptive marketing. That word adaptive is so important to today's conversation. Marketing's always changed, trends have always changed, but boy, is it changing faster and more violently through the reopening, post-shutdown, all the way forward to today. And what we're going to share with you is what we're seeing with data trends and with experiences with our clients to help you leverage the opportunity that's in the market right here and right now. And that is the challenge. It's always been difficult for health club operators to decide where to invest in marketing, how much, who do I go after, what channel? And then I think the proverbial, did it work and how well did it work has always been a question that's been difficult to answer. And that is very much what Instinctive Insights is in the business of doing. And we're going to put forward our analytics and trends to help you make those kinds of decisions today. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I need to recognize the fact that it is a very different playing field and experience depending on where you live and where your club exists today. We started seeing the first appreciable marketing activity back in May and June of 2020, predominantly in the South. And by working together very closely in partnership with multiple clients in the South, we started to pave a roadmap for what profitable marketing looked like in the reopening. And then as the South moved forward, we had various clients thaw in the Midwest and the West Mountain area. And lo and behold, not only were we able to talk amongst ourselves and figure out what was happening in our own backyard as a community of clubs, but we were able to leverage the trends that we had learned and seen from the pioneers in the South. And then came the Northeast, and much the same happened. You know, the Northeast, a lot of discussions amongst clubs with us in the middle to talk about how to navigate the water's very different regulatory environment, a lot more restrictions, a lot slower reopening. But as things thawed, we could take advantage of the Midwest, the West Mountain, and the South. And that leaves Canada and the West Coast. Sadly, not much marketing activity in either region. I am starting to hear rumblings in both of opportunities to get more aggressive as restrictions lift. And so if we're looking for positive news amongst the bad, it is that all of this intelligence and information can be leveraged to its fullest once those clubs in the West and Canada are ready to roll forward. So as we've had many clubs come back and start again with their marketing, things have changed. We've seen creative develop and modify itself. If you look at these examples from one of our clients, Crossgates, you'll see some images that looks like somebody's wearing a mask. You can see a layout of equipment, but there's no people. And then there's some images and text that looks kind of oddly similar to what you might have seen before the shutdowns, and it's almost as if we have a hybrid approach. And I'm going to walk you through the time frame or the timeline on how clubs that have been open the longest have evolved from one type of presentation to another, and more importantly, how they're presenting their offer or experience. So what are the top 5 trends of adaptive marketing that we're going to talk about today? We're going to focus a little bit more on how results and experiences vary state by state. And I'm going to talk about the conversations, very intimate ones that we have with club clients prior to marketing execution. Data is still key. It was always important. It's more important now. We have to look at it more in-depthly and more frequently to make sure that we're staying on top of the consumer's changing behavior, wants, and needs. Creative's different. You saw the example on the previous slide from Crossgates. You're going to really appreciate how it's changed as we go through a timeline of what things looked like in May and June of 2020 to what they look like now and how they're adapting. And really the adaptation is coming down to how offers are changing. Really important subheader there. Price is a factor, but not the focus. Okay, that was a contention that we shared with many clubs prior to the reopenings. It's more important now than ever, and that's going to be reflected when you see how experience-based offers have changed from what they used to be in the industry. And then finally, content has a purpose. We need to be relevant, and that really correlates well to how offers are experienced, and price is not the focus. So as we talk about what region you're in, what experience you're having locally, we're having a lot of conversations with clients. I mean, I think we're all working twice as hard to try to get the same results. And I'm making a lot of phone calls to ask questions such as, what does your membership base look like right now? Who do you see walking into the door to join a club and take a tour? Who's joining and staying more than 2 weeks? And then here's two really odd questions that someone might not think about. One is, what does the new mover market look like? Do you know any real estate agents that can tell you if it's hot, if it's cold, if prices are up or down? New movers tell us some really important cues. I'll get to that in a second. And then now I'm going to throw a little teaser at you, and I want you to stick this in your brain. A really important question as of the last month or so is, how red or blue is your community? And by red and blue, I don't mean angry and Smurfs. I mean conservative or liberal, Democrat or Republican. It's very important for us to understand whether or not a market, and more particularly the membership base that is joining a club, has a political leaning one way or the other. And I'm sure several people right now are wondering, where is Jeremy going with this? All right, I'm teasing you on purpose. It's going to make a lot of sense and be extremely important and extremely relevant. But like any good presenter, I'm just going to let it sit there kind of off to the side for a while, and then we'll come back to it. So we're spending a lot of time talking to our clients about the local environment to learn what's going on with boots on the streets. We're also spending a lot more time looking at the data. For example, I was looking at a client's data set yesterday, and I was analyzing who the heck is joining the club as of November 1st. Okay, what about as of December 1st? What about as of January 1st? The point is, I wanted to see, even though I've talked to the client and they've gave me their story of who's coming to the club, I wanted to look at the data, the facts, and see if we have a lot of young professionals coming into the club, or if we have a lot of families with older children. And a really important point of that analysis is, don't look at quantity, look at percentages. By that, I mean, let's pretend that a hypothetical club has a whole lot of young professionals joining, and they're on the phone with me, and, Jeremy, we can tell that young professionals, they are strong in the market. Let's go after them. Well, what if they're in a college town? And I go and I look at the data of everybody that's joined since November or December, and yeah, I can see quite a few young professionals, and we should probably focus on that market. But did you know, hypothetical club client, that you're actually attracting more families with teenagers? You just don't see it because they don't have the raw numbers. They're not the big population group in your market. So it's really important when we're looking at the types of people that are joining that we understand the totality of all the households and all the consumers and their demographic data points in a marketplace. And that's something we definitely have access to. And I would encourage clubs, if they're not working with an agency like us, to find out where to get access to either census information or something to help them quantify where they've got penetration and not just where they have quantity. Today's creative. All right, it's changed a lot. You can see on the images here, this very much looks like an early reopening attempt to market to consumers. You've got masks, you've got plastic, I call them blast shields, you've got spray, and then you've got the logo at the bottom right. Our clean team keeps you healthy and safe. The general message across the board, and I think this is right, in the early reopening, is this is what the experience is going to look like. Like, we were not fans of stock photography before the reopening. We're definitely not fans of stock photography now. You've got to show the experience that people are going to have when they walk in the door. Now, maybe you don't show somebody being thermal scanned if temperature checks are required by local governments, but you can at least show how the lobby has changed. And then we're also giving focus to the fact that something has been done to make the club safe. You can come here and not be scared. We've done something, whether it's out of regulations and compliance, or we've installed some mega filtration system, whatever it is, we're acknowledging, number one, the experience has changed, and number two, you don't have to come here and be afraid that you're going to die. I mean, that was kind of the initial stages of marketing, and it actually worked pretty well. So we've moved from this old world of lots of people up against each other, having a good time, smiling. I don't know what they're doing, but boy, they're having a wonderful time there on the left. Real close together. So on the right-hand side, we're not even going to show people. We're just going to show the layout of the equipment with the shields, etc. But I think this is where it gets exciting. The offers have changed as we've started to focus on a different experience. I'm going somewhere. Right now we're about halfway through the reopening, and I'm more excited to share what the second part looks like. So when we talk about offers being experience-based, we're not talking as much about the beach body. Come in and lose weight, yay. Join now, get the next month free. We're talking more about why you would join a gym in the first place. And I think the answer to that question has changed. Whereas before, it might have been more of the pop culture concept of looking good and feeling good. Now it can be more about, I go to the gym to be healthy and to support a proper immune system and to prevent diseases. All the things we kind of wanted to talk about as an industry before, but the consumer just really wasn't willing to listen. They still wanted to get the six-pack for the beach when we wanted them and the government to focus on healthy outcomes and wellness. Well, if that's the shift in the marketplace, which I'm going to share a little bit more in the next few slides, and again, price isn't really the factor. We had several conversations with clubs in the early reopening. Should I reduce price? Should I try to compete with the high volume, low price players? What do I do to make sure I swoop up members from anybody who's closing or struggling? We ran a couple of pricing studies and pricing model equations, and ultimately nobody really decided to make any deviations in price. And I'm glad they didn't, because further along into the reopening, we started hearing, especially for our clients that are more what you would call a mid-tier or high-tier, that they were seeing quite a few people jump ship from the low-cost clubs to join them. And the reason was, one, this is an investment now. It's not just a $10 charge on my credit card for a gym that I may or may not go to, but at least I feel like I checked the box. Because if that's all you wanted from a gym, you're probably too afraid or too busy to go back. People are now willing to pay up for what they perceive to be more support and better support for their healthy lifestyle. And they're willing to pay up for a club that has more space, more options, and more amenities, and a perception usually that those bigger clubs are more safe because they have more square footage, et cetera. So price is, in my opinion, and from what I'm hearing from my clients, much less of a factor. And so again, that gets us back to when you're doing marketing and you're putting together content, don't talk about the losing weight. Let's make the shift in message. Let's start talking about the industry the way the folks at the Genovix group always wanted to, because that is literally what consumers want to hear now. They want to hear, I can come to your gym to be healthy and wealthy and wise, not to lose weight and look great. But before I leave that topic completely, because I don't want to be wrong when the summer rolls around, let me take a pause. I have noticed a shift, and we're starting to see in some areas a hybrid. So now we got like a hybrid of a hybrid, which is, yeah, come to the gym for your healthy living and your wellness, but you can also get looking good for the beach at the same time. So I think we're going to probably have a mix of both messages, largely depending on whether or not a market is more or less likely to travel closer to a beach, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that's okay. We can definitely weave the two together and be in a better position in terms of offer presentment and experiences than we have in the industry in the past. So if we've talked about what we might put in front of people and how we present a club, where is the action at? Who's converting? Referrals and alumni have been an interesting seesaw match between the two. Prior to the reopening, alumni, very consistent for most clubs, really easy picking in terms of profitable marketing campaigns, and referrals were good too. Hey, bring in somebody else, a friend, a family member, a coworker. Well, with the reopening, even playing carefully with alumni, and we were putting gatekeepers on so that we were not attacking anybody that was a freeze or a cancel from, call it February 15th into whenever a particular location shut down. Those people canceled and froze because they're scared. And until we can see the group that may or may not be scared, which is everybody else that's an alumni, until we can see them convert, there's no reason to go to the most frozen chunk of ice. We need to see something thaw along the way. And as we went after alumni that had frozen or canceled either as part of the reopening, which isn't good, it means they didn't stay long, must not have liked the experience, or they did so before all of this happened, the conversion rates just really weren't there. They were about half on a good day what they used to be before the reopening. But what was shocking is once clubs got through those first 2-3 months of reopening, when we started engaging the new members, either new for the first time or they rejoined, the referral conversion rates were just off the charts. We're talking 4, 5, 6 times in some cases what they were pre-shutdown. Anyone that joins your gym, especially if you're sitting, right now in a more restricted area, the Northeast, the West Coast, Canada, anyone that joins your gym early on, brand new or rejoin, they are a fitness pioneer. They are not afraid. They want it. They look at the gym experience as a luxury now, as opposed to just something they can take for granted as a commodity. And they want other people to share that experience with them. And I can raise my hand virtually because that's exactly who I am. I was back at the gym day number 1 and on my knees thanking everybody I could that I didn't have to use that clunky home equipment anymore that just wasn't really getting the job done. It was preserving 80%, not helping me maintain my 100%. Who else is converting? New movers. I talked about working with a real estate professional to understand the new mover market earlier. If you've got good new mover activity, 2 things new movers tell us that we can use to our advantage. Number 1, they're moving. If you're scared and you're not going to join a gym, much less do anything else, you're not going to move. You're going to stay put. So movers by default, they're out and about, they're doing something, setting themselves up with a new life and a new situation, exploring. That's a good thing. Number 2, we can see what kind of a house they're buying. So if you're a club that typically resonates with people that can, afford a house that's $350,000 or more, and I know those of you in Boston and New York and the West Coast are laughing at me right now for using such a low number, but hey, I'm in Ohio, right? $350,000, that's a pretty decent house here. If a new mover is buying a house that's equivalent to the kind of financial stability or well-being they need to join a club, then they're still economically viable. So they're not scared and they're economically viable. And those are 2 pretty darn good data points when you're trying to find opportunities through a reopening. Then we've got families with kids. You got 2 groups here. We got kind of your traditional younger family, call it 40s and 50s adults with a teenager in the home. And then you've got seniors with kids, seniors with children in the home. Typically it is a teenager. I like to put these 2 groups together because often they behave the same. I see too often where seniors are put in a bucket all by themselves, and really they should be put in a bucket either with children or without children, because a 72-year-old with a 16-year-old in the home is going to behave almost the same as a 55-year-old with a 16-year-old in the home. And these 2 groups do not show as much reluctance to join the club as some of the other personas. And then we have young professionals. They have been an absolute shining star in the reopening. I have a friend that often jokingly says, young people aren't scared, they do whatever they want. And it appears to be that way in the gym mentality. We're seeing way better conversion rates than we have in the past. But I think what's more important, better conversion rates in channels we don't normally expect. Do you find young professionals on Instagram? Yeah, obviously. Sometimes on Facebook, not so much. But we're seeing them convert in direct mail, of all places. They're just much more receptive to the marketing messages than they were before. So where are the duds? Remote learners. And this is going to be, again, think of that state map, that local environment. If you've got schools that are not open for in-person learning, you have parents that are probably struggling to figure out how to run their daily life, much less find time to go to the gym. They might want to go to the gym. They might not be scared, but they can't. So very much think about families with younger children in context of what pressures are on them in terms of the school system, childcare, et cetera. Empty nesters, those without kids, terrible, 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 terrible. Never seen such an inactive persona in my entire life of marketing. I'd say the first 10,000 or 20,000 swings we took at empty nest households, we got 0 conversions. I think there's only been 2 or 3 clients in our entire footprint that have been able to get anybody to convert. So if you weren't excited about silver sneakers before, You don't need to be excited about it now. And then frozen accounts, they are what they are. They're starting to thaw slowly for some clubs, but until we can see a more appreciable return of alumni, I'm not sure there's much opportunity there. All right, so we've talked about the personas, we've talked about the offer and the creative and data. What's left is the channels we can execute in. And so here we have what I call a marketing fruit tree. And like any good tree, you're going to have low-hanging fruit that's easy to pluck, and you're going to have high-hanging fruit, which requires either climbing or a ladder. And so we usually look at that second. So what does the mix look like today? And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how it's changed. Direct mail is right now pretty impressive. And I'm going to juxtapose that by saying that 3 months ago, I would have told you that direct mail was probably not where I wanted you to start. I wanted you to look at Facebook and Instagram and Twitter first before direct mail. And I'm gonna get there in a second. Let me skip that because I need to talk about social media and direct mail in context of each other. YouTube has been great. It has not been impacted by much of anything through the reopening, very consistent performance along the way. The way I look at that is I don't think people predominantly go to YouTube as a destination. They end up on YouTube because of something they saw somewhere. So you're on Facebook, you're on Twitter, you're on whatever, and you click and now you're on YouTube. And because you're watching something about fitness, which I know a lot of people do, there's an ad from a club. So been very, very consistent, great place to put marketing and very competitive. Now let's go up the tree, pay-per-click. I'm going to get to that in a second. There's the bad boy in the room, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, because it needs to be talked about in context with pay-per-click and direct mail. That teaser I threw out there earlier about the Smurfs and the angry people, or the Republicans and the Democrats, liberals and conservatives, use your favorite mantra. Big tech has taken censorship to a new level. We have to talk politics. We don't have to talk what we think about it unless you want to, but we have to talk about it. And with the censorship that has taken place on big tech, we have seen a significant, I can't even express that word enough, decline in performance in social media. We're talking about campaigns that have dropped by 80% in terms of conversion rate. Not only dropping in conversion rate, but they're not reaching the same people anymore. And this is where I ask my club clients, tell me about your members. Just be honest. Are they conservative? Are they Trump supporters? Were they Democrat, Biden supporters? Or do they not care? We have to talk about it, because if you are in an area that is what you would call conservative, there's a good chance that your audience is no longer on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter. Case in point, I saw this coming before the election. If you pay attention to politics, you could see where things were going. So I joined all the alternate platforms. I joined Wimkin, I joined Parler, I joined Telegram. And those platforms have been reporting their growth. And it's not a surprise that within 48 hours of big tech censoring Donald Trump, you had 25 million users join Parler. And in the month of January, over 100 million people joined Telegram, which was the alternative to Facebook's Messenger. So what we've seen, even as a team, my employees, for those that are still active on Facebook, they're seeing the same ads a lot. And our clients, the campaigns that we run, are seeing a major drop in reach, the number of people you can get in front of, and a major increase in frequency. And this is the exact opposite of what happened, which is why it's important to talk about. In the early stages of reopening, the action was on Facebook and Instagram. People are at home. They've been shut down. They're looking for information. They're connecting with friends. They've got time on their hands. And that was all in a market with less ad spend because there were less businesses actively engaged in marketing. It was the wonderland. We had the best and lowest acquisition costs in the history of our company in the middle of a reopening after a shutdown, right? The world should still be terrible and the marketing campaigns are going great. But all of that went kapoof as soon as big tech decided that they were more interested in censorship than they were in the advertising and the marketing space. So now in the new year, we are recommending that people push most of their marketing spend away from social media unless they're in a liberal area. Then it's fine. Your people are still there and you can still very much leverage the channel and have maximum profitability. But if you're not in a liberal area, you need to divert that money over to direct mail and pay-per-click. Direct mail, I know a lot of people don't like to believe in direct mail, but if you control it properly, it's very lucrative. It is the only way to guarantee you can reach who you want. If they have a pulse and they have an address, you can talk to them. That's very powerful. Pay-per-click, extremely powerful. Why? These are people searching. They're on Google. They're on Bing. And you might want to start thinking about things like DuckDuckGo. If you're not familiar with that alternative platform, as more people are leaving Google and Bing for alternatives, and they're even leaving Chrome and Edge for things such as Brave. The world's changing. We have to stay on top of that as marketers. But pay-per-click people, they're searching. They want to find a gym. They want a place to work at. Oh, great. You just told us you're not scared. Those AdWords may have been more expensive than other means in the past for marketing, but I highly encourage clubs to look at that today, because even if you're paying a little bit of a premium, you're paying it to get in front of people that are telling you they're willing to join a gym. And that's a very important question that needs to be answered today. Now, the top of the tree, IP targeting, didn't do a whole lot of it going into the shutdown. It kind of lost its luster. If you've ever looked at the channel or are looking at the channel, stay away from it. I've talked to the people that are involved in the backbones that run that particular process, and they have shifted their business model into supporting companies that want to do contact tracing. I don't think it's a good idea to do marketing with a company that has abandoned marketing and gone in different directions. So I don't think we'll ever do an IP targeting campaign ever again. Raw email, although it's at the top of the tree, that's not a bad thing. When I say raw email, this is not Constant Contact or HubSpot and the list that you manage with prospects and leads. This is using predictive models and algorithms, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to go out and license the email addresses of people that we believe to be a good fit for a club. And so we're getting an opportunity to engage people in email that otherwise we would not. It's at the top of the tree because the conversion rates are usually really low. I mean, if you think about cold calling via email, sometimes I refer to it as that, you're not going to have big conversion rates, but it's cheap. And so if you can go big and broad cheaply and generate profitable ROI, that's an okay thing. So as we look around the tree, depending on where you fall, you want to think very carefully about social media. That is the big elephant in the room. Do you want that to be a big part of your mix? Do you want to pull back? Do you want to walk out of it completely? So this is the elevator speech time. Yay. And I hope that some of you will actually give me 5 minutes to talk about my company. And I think you'll actually find it interesting. I'll try not to go into too many of the gnarly details and put it more in context of how we're able to look at the industry and the trends so adaptively because of who we are. So who is Instinctive Insights? We're a data-driven marketing company. We don't use that word as a fluff. We truly are. We don't throw the word machine learning out there as fluff. We truly use machine learning, and we have predictive models and algorithms that have been built specific to the fitness club industry in order to drive membership profitably, and that really is who we are. When people ask what we do, what I should say is we create profitable marketing campaigns that can be proven. If you're not making more money than you're spending, there's no point in doing marketing with us or with anybody else. And we are working to tag and track every single interaction we can with a prospect on behalf of a club. It doesn't matter if it's in Facebook. We can track it there. We don't have to rely on their algorithms. That's something a lot of people don't know. Not only can we control the target audience, but we can analyze it on the back end, connect it to a club's membership data, and monetize it. So everything that we're doing, aside maybe a little bit from AdWords, because that gets a little bit tricky, but everything else, we know who we're going after. We know when we engage them. And if they convert, we can monetize it. We can dedupe it between channels. Very, very important for us to be extremely nerdy and technical with the data so that we can prove to ourselves and to our clients, hey, it makes sense to invest here. It doesn't make sense to invest there. That's how we keep businesses healthy, especially in a tricky environment. So what is our approach? Number one, we need to truly know who a club's best customers and members are. We are insatiably wanting early on in a conversation to take a look at a club's membership data, past members, current members. We want to know which members stay the longest, because someone who stays 32 months, that's a lot better than someone who's only going to stay 7. And we want to dissect and break all of that data up into different demographics, life stages, personas, so that we know where in a market we could go because we can see what types of people the club are attracting, but we also know that we're going after people that are going to generate the best revenue and the best outcome. And part of that process is understanding the ocean of possibility. When we're first engaged with a client, we perform what we call a markets penetration study. And that process is one where we take the club's member data and alumni data, which I talked about, but then we build out a database of all of the consumers in their marketplace. And marketplace is defined based on what we see with their membership data. I mean, think about a club in downtown Chicago, people won't go more than a block or two to join a gym. Very different than if you're in the suburbs of Louisville, Kentucky, as an example. So once we get all the data together, we're taking a look at where a club has most penetrated the market. And then we can understand how much deeper do we think they can go with penetration. Then we can see which personas seem to have the best opportunity. And we know because of the work we're doing with other clubs, probably in their state, in their region, and across the country, where to find those people. Where are they at? How do we get in front of them? How do we engage them? What kind of content do we deliver to a young professional, knowing that they're going to have a very different perspective of what they want to see at a club than a 62-year-old with a 15-year-old teenager in the home, as an example. And that's where the insights factor comes into play, is our predictive models. I don't use the word, I try not to use it too much because I find that people don't want to hear it over and over again, but they're super important because they're the crystal ball to projecting outcomes. When we put together a campaign for either an existing client or maybe a potential new client, we're not just sizing up the opportunity, but we're projecting the outcome. We're taking a look at what we know about the processes that we run, the types of clubs that we serve, what we can see with market penetration. And we're saying, if you do X, Y, Z, this is what we think you will net in terms of new member households and the ROI based on what you've told us about your business, how much you charge, how long people stay, some of that we can see in the data, et cetera. So we're really taking the what's going to happen and is it going to work guesswork out. And we're providing campaign perspectives that will not only maximize ROI, but show clients where there's a law of diminishing return, where, you know what, if you give us more money, thank you, but no thank you, because the more money you give us after a certain point to do marketing, you're going to actually make less because there's just not more of an opportunity in the market, if that is a factor. So knowing the channels is extremely important, but also protecting your budget. And part of that is what I just explained with the law of diminishing returns. But I want to back up a bit. The very first club client I ever met was, oddly enough, this is going back a ways, through a printer. And they brought me in because the printer was going to lose the account because my friend Thomas, who was running that club, was throwing something like 1.4 million direct mail pieces out a year, and his results were down while the print costs were going up. Once we got done analyzing his campaign and onboarding him as our first fitness club client, we were able to reduce about 60 to 70% of the marketing activity and not have any negative impact on the results. There's one thing I learned early on in the fitness industry, looking at competitors and how people were doing marketing, a lot of waste. Sometimes it's just as important to talk about how we can cut the fat as it is where we know we need to target. But the two really go together. If you know where to target, you can cut the fat, you can protect your budget, and boom, you can maximize your ROI. So last slide. What does 2021 look like? Where are we going? What's changed and what hasn't? More refreshes of data, more conversations with clients, whether you're working with me, whether you're working with somebody else, whether you're just talking to your peers. Talk, and talk. Discuss the news cycle. What is going on in your community that you don't have control over? If the news is scaring the heck out of everybody and you're talking to people and they're all scared, you know what? My crystal ball and predictive modeling isn't going to do anything for you. We got to wait for something to change before we can move forward. And that's where planning, despite changing, makes sense. Our, recommendation, it's been this way pretty much since the reopening, create a campaign, plan it, design it, get it ready to go, and sit on it And if you have to cancel at the last minute because things are out of your control, the news cycle, governors locking things down, who knows, right? There's so many insane things going on. Just take your pick. If things aren't in your favor, just cancel it. And our commitment to club clients is, if you do all that work with us, and we're a full service agency, if we do the design and everything, if you have to cancel the campaign, we don't charge you for it. And you know why we don't charge you for it? Because we're in the same scenario you're in. We're living and we're succeeding because we're helping support the clubs that are living and succeeding. And we all have got to make some room for each of us to have a little bit of opportunity to make changes, back away from things, switch it up, because sometimes things are just out of our control. What stayed the same? Thank goodness the predictive models have proven to be adaptive. I wrote the foundation of the models, so I know them very well. Granted, I hired people smarter than me, and I had them reprogram them to make them more efficient, but they were designed to be adaptive. I wrote my first iteration of models that ultimately led to what we've got for fitness before the Great Recession. And during the Great Recession, boy, I had to make a lot of changes because the world was changing, the economy was changing, and the models needed to keep up with a lot more micro data points making movements as opposed to just looking back at, oh, what's happened in the last 6 months or last year. So the models very much adapted through the reopening to today. They continue to. We're very pleased with that. It helps us steer clients in the right direction. Persona-driven design. Not everybody does this, so it's important to iterate. If you're talking to a young professional and you're talking to a 62-year-old or anything in between, don't use the same ads. Don't use the same words. You can show something. You know that a young professional is going to be more likely to be interested in high-intensity training. And the older person, I don't know, aquatic therapy? Don't show childcare if you know that a household doesn't have children. Do show it if you know they've got children of the right age and that's something that you offer. Really simple stuff, but a lot of times it gets missed in the marketing mix. And if you don't psychologically connect a person with, this is a place for people like me, within the first second or so, they're not going to take a look at the rest of your ad. It doesn't matter if they're interested in the gym or not. I appreciate your time today. I hope everybody enjoys the summit. If you would like to learn anything more about us or talk about the market penetration study I mentioned earlier, or if you'd just like to have a conversation about the industry, I find that those are extremely enjoyable and much more valuable to me than they have been in the past. I try to have as many conversations with executives, owners, and marketers as I can. Feel free to reach out. Deneen's email address is down below if you'd like to start a conversation about what we do and what the status of your club looks like and where you're at with your marketing plans. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your summit and have a wonderful day.